Decided about 3 weeks ago now that we would take a deep dive into how the 12 steps operate to facilitate the achievement of emotional sobriety. So tonight we're going to be discussing step 2. The last 2 weeks we discussed step 1, and at the end of the meeting tonight, Patrick will tell you how you can go back and listen to the video that we recorded. We just recorded the first half an hour or 20 minutes of the discussion. You'll be able to go back and listen to those if you'd like to review or if you weren't here at the meeting. Patrick, I'm going to ask you if you could stick that in the chat as well. If you could put the link in there, that would be great. And then people could copy and paste that. So tonight we're going to be digging into step 2. So for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about step 2 and some of the psychological forces that are operating in step 2. And then the last 10 minutes, Thom is going to be the discussant on step 2. Mary Gordon was the discussant on step 1. When we do step 3, Mary will be back with us, and Thom and Mary are going to alternate through the steps together. So let me just review a little bit in terms of what we did in terms of step 1, and just to take a look at it. Now, remember, we're looking at this step from the perspective of emotional sobriety. So in the first step, when we're looking at that we're powerless and that our lives have become unmanageable, we're really talking about that we're powerless over this emotional dependency that has developed in our life. And it has really made our life unmanageable because of this idea that I've got to control the people and the situations and circumstances surrounding me to be okay. And if you've sat down and looked at this to any degree, you realize the incredible damage that's done in our life. The first piece of damage is that we've built our life on a lie. I call it the big lie that we're only okay if, right? I'm okay if situations or circumstances go the way that I think they should go, which really diminishes our capacity for coping with what it is. And that's an incredible problem, because without having faith in ourselves to cope, then we're going to be looking for all of these other, what we look to our environment to support us rather than to find a way to support ourselves. So we've got all these rules on how people are supposed to behave and what's supposed to happen for people to support me so that I'm okay in the world. And if they don't do that, then I try to manage them rather than manage me. I've become pretty good at managing other people rather than managing myself. I got a PhD in that department. So in step 1, just as a quick review, is what we're doing is we're getting aligned with reality. And the reality is I cannot control you or life. So when I start to get aligned with reality, it actually creates humility. It right sizes me. I realize that there's gaps in my knowledge. I realize I have no business putting my expectations on you or on life to be a certain way. Well, as we talked about this, is that as I accept that, I realize I'm in quite a dilemma. This is the way I've been living my whole life. I mean, this is all I know what to do. And when I start facing the fatal nature of my condition, my emotional dependency, I don't know yet what to do differently. I don't know how to surrender these crippling expectations, as Bill says. So at the working of step 1 leads to this existential crisis. And that's what I talked about last week. And the crisis is I'm no longer wanting to do what I've been doing. I know that doesn't work. It's created a lot of problems in my life. It's caused a lot of wreckage, and it's going to continue to do so. But I don't have any other possibility. I only know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know. So I'm left in that incredible dilemma of not being able to turn back to what I've been doing, although I will, inevitably. What we say, when you get stressed, you regress. I mean, you're going to go back and try that stuff is when you're stressed out. And it takes a lot of effort to turn this thing around. But I don't know what to do different. So I'm in this dilemma. I've got a serious problem that is, sabotaging the possibilities in my life. And I don't know how to turn this around. That's the existential crisis. Bill says that at the end of step 1, we are reduced to a state of absolute helplessness. Absolute helplessness. So he calls it, we're over a barrel. Look, I'm in this state of helplessness, but I don't know what to do. Now, remember what I said is that the amazing things about the steps, from my perspective, is the energy that develops when you work one step. Can you see the energy that's developed? You're having this existential crisis. This existential crisis, there's a sequential imperative. It needs to be resolved. Something has to happen. You cannot live in a state of crises. So, and that's what's the beauty of step 2. So step 2 comes along, we come to believe that a power greater than ourselves came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So from a psychological point of view, step 2 is a resolution of the existential crisis that was created in step 1. It says, and this is the resolution of that crisis, it says there is hope. Now, let me read you, because I've become a big fan of the American Psychological Association's dictionary. So let me read you the definition of hope, because I think it's very interesting, and it's got many dimensions of it that really apply here. So hope is the expectation or the idea that one will have a positive experience, or that a potentially threatening or negative situation will not materialize or will ultimately result in a favorable state of affairs. Hope has been characterized in the psychological literature in various ways, including as a character strength and emotion, a component of motivation that is critical to goal attainment, a mechanism that facilitates coping with loss, illness, and other significant stresses or psychological issues, or an integrated combination of these features. See also optimism. If we're going to stay with hope right now. Optimism may be too big of a piece to bite off at this point in time, but we can definitely start to see the relevance of hope. So let me talk to you about an interesting thing. There was a psychologist at Harvard University who did a very, very interesting study. He wrote a book. His name was Jerome Frank, Dr. Jerome Frank. And he wrote a book called Persuasion and Healing. Right? Now, it's fascinating because what he did is he wanted to understand what are the therapeutic forces that are operating in psychotherapy. He wanted to identify those. So what he decided to do was compare 3 different healing activities to see if he could find some commonality amongst these different groups. He looked at Western medical doctors, he looked at shamans, and he looked at psychotherapists, all involved in healing. And he said to himself, as he went into these groups and studied what they did, he said that the commonality amongst every one of these healing practitioners was that they instilled hope in the person that came to see them. And that the installation of hope mobilized certain forces within that person that heretofore they were unable to mobilize. They could not activate them because of their mindset. But now you go to see a shaman, and if you're having these terrible nightmares and the shaman's telling you, well, it's your grandma and she's trying to work through some issues from your past, you go, oh my God, I understand what's going on now. great, grandma, let's get this thing, let's deal with this. And the shaman's going to help grandma deal with whatever the feelings were. And now you feel like, God, there's an explanation on why I'm suffering the way I am. And there's a path that we're going to take to resolve the problem. So that's how all of these practitioners instilled hope. They gave you an understanding and explanation of what you were suffering from, and they pointed out a protocol that they would follow to help you resolve the problem. You've got bronchitis, your bronchi are inflamed. We're going to give you this antibiotic, is going to take care of, kill the bacteria and reduce the inflammation in your lungs. So your cough is going to be resolved. Gives you what? Hope. Right? You go to a psychotherapist. If it's psychoanalytic, there's definitely something going on in your unconscious. We're going to put you in therapy and figure out what it is. That's what's causing these symptoms that you're having of anxiety. And so you're going to lay on the couch and you're going to free associate for the next 5 years of your life. And we'll figure out what's underneath that. That's the kind of stuff that's happening. Well, what do? We walk in the program and Bill says, hey, you are suffering from an illness. If, let's say, you're looking at your alcoholism, you got a mental obsession coupled with a physical allergy, an explanation of why you've been behaving the way you are. You're not a bad person. You're just sick. You need to get well. Here are the steps that we suggest as a program of recovery. You see how it follows that same path. Emotional sobriety, same thing. Hey, we've got this emotional dependency. That's what's causing so much problem in our relationships. If we learn to deal with this and learn how to support ourselves, now we can have a different way of life. So this becomes such a critical part in terms of our experience, this installation of hope that there's another way. Now, where we block the possibility is that we think that somehow, if I haven't been able to figure this out up to now, then you can't figure it out. I can't tell you how many people that come in to see me in therapy and they're saying, well, I've tried everything. I've tried everything to deal with this problem, And I'm thinking, my God, you've tried everything. You're incredible. You're the first person I've met in the world that's actually done that, because it's an impossibility to try everything. You can only try what? What you know to try. You can only apply what is available in your consciousness. And your consciousness, if we go back to the humility we were talking about, is obviously limited. But this is what makes the humility such an important part of turning around this emotional dependency issue that we have, because we need to accept that the consciousness that I have that's developed this problem is not going to help me figure this thing out. It's just not. I've got to bring in new information. I've got to bring in new experiences in my life. And that's what step 2 is saying, that you need to come to believe that there's a new possibility. Now, if you believe in God, that's fine. You don't have to. This is what's powerful about this program. And Bill says that you don't have to have any belief whatsoever in terms of this program, because the process works. That's what we're looking at here. That's why we're taking this dive into the steps, is to look at the process that's involved. Process is all of a sudden we start to see we've got a serious problem. It's really destroying our life. We don't know what to do about it. We're in this existential crisis. And now we come to believe that we can turn things around, that things can be different in our life. I say that recovery is the discovery of new possibilities in our life. That's what recovery is about. It's the discovery of new possibilities. And that's what step 2 is inviting us, is have some faith that there can be some new possibilities in your life. Now, you don't know about them because we just don't. We haven't expanded our consciousness yet. But we can start to see that there's new possibilities. Now, how do we come to that? How do we come to believe? Well, this is where meetings become, I think, of incredible value, and especially a meeting like this where we're talking about emotional sobriety. We start hearing other people share that are struggling with very similar issues that we have. And we start to hear some of their success stories. God, I start to figure this out a different way. I'm starting to do this different. I mean, somebody was commenting on my new book, which is the 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety. And in each of the insights, I give at least one example, one case example of someone struggling with the issues around that issue and discovering some new possibilities. And that's the exciting thing to me about recovery, is that we are discovering these new possibilities together. Well, I've said a lot about it, so I just want to leave this thought. So we get this idea that there is hope. There is a possibility for something different. Now, remember what I said. Each step is generating an energy. So we resolve the existential crisis. Now the energy is building up around hope. But hope can't just be an idea. We can't just stay with step 2. And you're going to see that when we start to talk about step 3. And we'll decide at the end of this evening if we want to do one more week on step 2. But right now, I will turn this over to Thom and let him have a shot at this thing. Thom, please. Hey.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's speaking of powerless, I've told this group before that how it is absolutely impossible for me to prepare to present anything. So today I spent the day trying to prepare, and it didn't work. It didn't work. But my favorite thing I did today was I went on YouTube and just found Father Martin on a 15-minute talk on step 2. And if you do nothing else after this thing, go find that. It's just, I mean, it's beautifully, it's beautifully restored. It's great. And it had been so long since I'd listened to a Father Martin talk. I forget how eloquent and how articulate and how beautiful this man is. And it's everything we're talking about. That was the thing. It's like, there's nothing, I mean, I was listening to him and I'm going, I know that's in Alan's, which book is that's in Alan's book. Yeah, I got that in that book. It's like, it's different words, whatever, but it's these same basic principles of, and Father Martin makes this point too, in talking about step 2, is that they chose the word sanity rather than sobriety. They were a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And he was so what I think of as ahead of his time, because he was saying, he was talking about just what this group is, which is this applies to anything. This is not just to alcohol. This is not just to addiction. This is not just to an eating disorder. This is for humans to be better. I think it's for humans to be better humans. And so I just love that. And one of the things that, that you can tell me, Alan, if this is original to Father Martin or if it's somewhere else, but I've heard him say it more than anybody else. And that is you come to, and then you come to believe, we came to, and as I listened to his talk, all of a sudden, step 2 became this big giant room for me. And it was like this big meditation room. It was like this place where, and I love your recap of step 1. And the idea that, and what Father Martin says in this thing is, basically step 1 is admitting a weakness, grand weakness. And he says, of course, what we know, this is humility, admitting a weakness is a strength. So, when we were there the first time thinking about going through there, we didn't feel it that way. There was nothing that I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel proud. I didn't, that stuff, but I can now. I can look back and feel all of that stuff. But we are, whether we feel it or not, there is a strength. And when they were, and I love the way you also talk about how one basically ushers you into the next one. So we're ushered from this first step where we have to admit this big weakness of we're powerless over our alcohol or whatever we're powerless over. And oh, by the way, our lives are unmanageable. Now come on in here, and one of the things Father Martin said is he said, you don't, or maybe this is in the 12 and 12. I honestly can't remember, but you don't have to do it all at once. Step two is this has always been the case for me. Step two is a step of process. A lot of action steps in 12 steps, but this is a meditative process. This is you come on in and sit down and be here as long as you need to be here. And it is where community begins to be the foundation of everything. You come because these people have experienced what I have experienced. And I remember that very specifically, looking in as I began to learn that I could believe. I remember hearing somebody tell some stories, talk in AA and tell some stuff that was very familiar to me. Some of mine sounded like me, but they were laughing. And I remember just thinking, this guy's laughing about it. And they're all just kind of having a nice time talking about this. And it's like, and I was just still in that silent pain, but it was that place of hope where, wait a minute, if that guy just, and this becomes what is higher power. For me, people always have trouble with the God word and all this other stuff. That's fine. Anything you want, but I've never had a problem with that. And I've never had problems translating. I'm going like, look, if I am, or like the mirror test that Father Martin talks about. He says, try the mirror test. Go home, look in the mirror, any mirror, and if you can't think, if you look, whoever you see in there, if you can't imagine that there's something bigger and greater than you out there, then you really need some help. And that's true. But me plus another person, me plus Alan, me plus anyone, me plus Brian, anybody. It's like we're a power greater than me. So, I mean, I don't have, and I absolutely embrace, I have lots of different beliefs, but the power of community is just so healing. It has been in my life. And so when we come to believe, because we sit there and we keep showing up. And that's what does it is you keep showing up, and it doesn't the step doesn't tell us that we have to do something to come to believe. It just says we will do this. And we do by being there, by staying there, by continuing to come back. I was even thinking about nowadays, now that we understand brain plasticity, it's like that's involved in this. It's like the idea is if we keep coming, we don't have to have belief. I don't have to have belief. I don't have to have patience. I don't have to have hope. I just need to show up. And, if I show up, these other people are going to start to wear off on me. I'm going to start to catch some of this shit, and it's like, I don't have, my conscious mind always thinks it's supposed to know everything, but it doesn't. I have a little sign on my wall that says, you don't have to understand what's going on while it's going on. It's such a relief to realize, we'll get our insight with hindsight, but we keep coming to these meetings and we start to pick up stuff. And one of the things I want to just say before I finish is I have a little motivation checklist thing that I use with most of my clients. And it's because I believe that too often people think about motivation as something that either exists or doesn't exist. And it's weird because somebody will go to treatment and they'll say like, well, you'll have to come back when you really want it, or you're going to have to come back when you're more motivated. You go like, treating motivation is at least, what do you think, Alan? 95% of what we do for a living, but motivation has many different components. So I have this five checklist. It's on my website. I can get you to it if you're interested in it, but I'll tell you what they are real quick. Dissatisfaction, desire to change, belief that change is possible, belief that I deserve it, and willingness to do what it takes. Dissatisfaction, we come into the program, we got plenty of it. Desire to change, we got plenty of it usually. Where we start to break down and where step 2 comes in is belief, because we do believe that people can change. We do believe that people can heal. We just don't believe we can do it. I believe you can, and you can, and you can, and you can, but not me. And so that's where the hope gets a little foothold, when I start to be able to identify with these other people and realize I'm not that different from that person. Just maybe, you know. And the other thing about community, I'll say before I finish too, is, you know, I always say it's like I can't find my glasses. You know, this is part of why group therapy works. It's like it includes groups in 12-step. It's like everybody there can see my glasses. I can't see them. It's like you feel hopeless. Everybody else sees possibility when they look at you. You know, you may feel hopeless. I see possibility when I look at you. We need to hear that from other people. And we start to hear it. And we start to hear it from really sane people, for the most part, who are not trying to push it on us, but they're sharing it with us just consistently. And with that, I think that's where we come to believe that in my language of this little handout is, I need to come to believe that it's possible for me. And I'll end with that.
Fantastic. Very good, Thom. Thank you.
Thanks.
So you inspired me. We will do step 2 again next week, because a few things you said brought some stuff into mind. So we'll continue our discussion next week.
Oh, like you and I are going to fit into one thing. Yeah.
Never happens.